Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jim Siebert. I'm proud to be the superintendent here in the School District of Waukesha, and I'm joined tonight by Darren Clark. Darren is our Chief Financial Officer for the School District of Waukesha. So we appreciate you joining us. This is our presentation our second community one that we're doing, and we're calling it, it's a long-range budget planning process that we're calling Optimizing Our Future. And we'll explain to you this evening what is the rationale behind why we're recommending it administratively, and what are the aspects that we're looking at. So on this first slide is a QR code. It's also on the handouts that you have, and that's the way that we're going to gather questions from you. They'll formulate into a document that Ms. Genderman, our Deputy Superintendent, has. And ultimately, they'll help us do a couple of things. They'll help us be able to have some time at the end of this presentation to answer some of them, first and foremost. Secondly, they'll help us really in our thinking as we get into phase 2, which we'll talk about what that is here in just a minute. And then lastly, they'll help us create a frequently asked question document that we'll be able to put on our website so that we can clump them in themes. We're already seeing some themes that are evolving from our staff and our first community parent information session. And then we have them all in writing too, so we don't lose anything. We can make sure we have all of the pieces that people are interested in, and then we'll get those posted on our website as well. So that's the rationale behind the QR code. So let's start walking through the presentation, and Darren and I will partner on that. So as I said earlier, what we're looking to do administratively is create a long-range budget planning process that guides our future decision making. So right now what we do is we have roughly a $3 to $4 million structural deficit every year, and we figure out how to make the balanced budget year in, year out. It's primarily on voluntary attrition of teachers and other staff, as well as retirements, and we're generally able to balance the budget in that manner. However, we're going to show you tonight that we have some challenges in terms of enrollment due directly to the birth rate, and why we think this type of process would be valuable for us to go through. So we have some bullet points that we want to talk through with you as well. The first one being that it's always been and will always be our primary objective to have great high quality learning experiences for our students and their families here in the School District of Waukesha. Number 2, we can't stress this enough, how proud we are of our teaching and district support staff. They are excellent. We have some of the best in Southeast Wisconsin and certainly in the state of Wisconsin. They have a very strong focus on student achievement, and we've done a number of things that we'll talk about later in the program to enhance their efforts as teachers to serve your students and all the students of this district. Number 3, we want to continue to provide the finest educational opportunities that we can. Yes. Oh, whoops. There we go. Thank you. All right. So the third one, we're wanting to continue the tradition that we have of offering a wide array of programs to support our kids. And to maintain that level of service and opportunity year over year, we're always looking at how do we best deploy the resources that we have available, which leads us into this process. A few more bullet points. We always have revered ourselves as very strong financial stewards of the resources that we receive, certainly from our local constituents and taxpayers, as well as the state of Wisconsin, and then to a smaller portion from the federal government. We want to continue that tradition. And we also want to point out that new schools were built as recently and opened as recently as 1993. Both Summit View Elementary and Waukesha West High School opened back then, when our enrollment peaked at just over 13,000 students in 12-13. Today, however, our enrollment has dropped, and it hovers right around 10,500 students total, and we'll show you some slides on that as well. The primary reason for that is the decline in the birth rate. And so the birth rate in the United States has been dropping since 2007. The last 20 years in Wisconsin, it's been slowly declining. And in Waukesha County, it's been declining at a rate faster than the state of Wisconsin. So the reality is there are just fewer students in general, and that is seen across not only the state of Wisconsin, not just here in Waukesha, but across the country. And so the whole purpose of this optimizing the future process is to look at reducing our building capacity or our footprint, the number of seats we have in the district, by 10 to 15% to match that current declining enrollment trend. And our initial focus is on our K-8 school footprint. So we are not talking about our high schools at this particular time. The other thing we want to make very clear, and I've alluded to it a little, is that we are not alone. And this is a nationwide problem. And here in Wisconsin, you can see we have a list of school districts that are currently talking about right sizing and how many schools they need in their portfolio, or districts that have already taken steps to do that. And as one of the top 10 largest school districts in Wisconsin, which we are, we have a number of other counterparts on this list, including Green Bay, Kenosha, the Milwaukee Public Schools, and Racine, to name a few. And then a number of districts that are in the teens in terms of the state of Wisconsin. There's over 420 school districts. These are some of the largest ones. And then also Kettle Moraine, who is our neighbor, and you've probably read about them in the paper recently. They're going through a very similar process, and in the last 18 years, they've went from 4,500 students to 3,200 students. So it is a birth rate problem that all of us are dealing with, including organizations in the blue box. And you've all probably seen in higher ed, Cardinal Stritch going offline, UWM at Waukesha going offline this summer, and those things are going to continue because there are fewer students coming through both the K-12 and higher ed pipeline. So now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Clark, who will take us through a few slides, and then I will come back and we'll wrap it up.
All right, thank you. I thought I'd start out by just doing a quick snapshot of our facility footprint, because if you were like me, I knew my kids' school, but you didn't know all the schools in the district or how many we even had. So we are currently operating 12 elementary schools, 4 middle schools, 4 high schools. Our new administration building is in the old Blair Elementary School. We have a service building for our buildings and grounds team, and then we lease one building to Richardson School, which provides special ed services for high need students, and that's at the old Pleasant Hill Elementary School out by Gerke's Corner. So this is the scale and scope that we're talking about, and I'll walk you through the data that we started to collect once we realized, as Dr. Siebert mentioned, for my 10 years in this position, every year we've gotten together as a cabinet and ultimately the board to talk about how are we going to balance this year's budget. Our expenditures are just growing at a faster pace than revenue are, and a lot of that is tied directly to enrollment, and we'll talk about that in a minute as well. But this year we started talking about, and we talked about enrollment every year, and some people will say, well, why is this a topic now? We haven't heard about it. It's part of our first budget assumption we make heading into the next year is, what's our enrollment going to be? Because we're funding on a per student basis. So to start the process and to lead us into the recommendation we've made to the board for this plan and process, we hired Bray Architect to identify what is the capacity of our buildings. And everyone has a different measure. Every principal will have a different measure of what their building is. So we brought in a third-party company that their profession is to design and build schools or renovate schools. So we went through and identified all the classrooms that are used and were designed for a classroom, and that's pretty much by the size of the room at each level. And we came up with a total by grade level here of elementary has over 5,700 kids. The middle school comes in right at 3,000 seats. And then our the high schools come in at 4,333 seats. The shaded area are 3 sites that we run and operate, but they're not being used for their original design purpose. And I'll use Blair, as I just mentioned before. Blair Elementary was serving as an elementary school. I believe the last year was 2018-19. It can hold about 350 students. We're housing admin out there but we could revert back to using that as a school. So I asked Bray, identify the maximum capacity as the buildings were originally designed. Pleasant Hill would be another example. We don't have to lease to Richardson School. We could return that to a school as well if enrollment drove us there. So these flex or alternate use buildings add 1,156 seats to our total. And district-wide, if we went, again, max use of every facility, we have 14,232 seats in the district. So for this slide here, I just put our current enrollment this year, and this is on-site enrollment count, meaning students being served in SDW buildings by SDW staff, and you can see the variance that we've occurred. And again, this has been a slow drop, and we'll show some history, but you can see these data. At the elementary level, we have almost 1,500 empty seats of capacity, 870 seats in the middle school. In the high schools, 1,158. These flex areas, White Rock campus is being used as our East Alternative High School and another program, but a small program. But you can see our total capacity available in the school district, if we go all in, is 4,557 students. That's a lot of kids. That's larger than most school districts in the state of Wisconsin, by far. So these are the numbers we're looking at when we were compiling and going ahead with making the recommendation to the board, but I really think it's an important snapshot for people to see the type of number of seats we're dealing with. Next, we know our enrollment history. So I took every 5 years for the last 20 years and just showed you by grade level. You can see in 04-05, we had over 6,700 elementary kids. This year we have 4,251. It's the same pattern at the middle school level, except for, and I'll touch on this in a second, but you can see the steady decline in the total and at the high school level, just every grade level. And what's happening is we are graduating larger classes in the kindergarten class coming in, and those smaller kindergarten classes then work their way through our system. And it's been going on for a decade. As Jim mentioned, and it's just been a slow, steady loss. The data looks a little weird in the orange box, and I highlight it just because it looks like, well, the data is wrong because you're growing at the middle school level. That's the year in 10-11 that the district changed our grade configuration, meaning the middle schools went to 6 through 8, took kids from the elementary, and so that's what you're seeing. But again, the teal line is really what you want to look at. The steady drop, and it's actually accelerated just slightly this past year. So a lot of data, but ultimately the biggest question is what's in the future? But during this time, we've lost, like Kettle Moraine that Jim mentioned, we've lost 25.5% of our kids in 20 years in our on-site buildings.
So I had mentioned earlier that we were one of the top 10 school districts in terms of size in the state of Wisconsin. We're actually number 7. And so in 24-25 at those numbers, we're number 7. If we go all the way back to 2004-05, we were also number 7. And we've been number 7 throughout the entire 20-year period, which again shows we're not alone. So all of the larger districts are losing kids at the same rate that we are. And it's directly tied to the birth rate and the lack of babies being born.
So as I mentioned, the next step is how do we know what's coming in the future? And I'll just bring both these up now. We've worked with Applied Population Laboratory, which is tied to UW-Madison for the last 10 years. And about every 4 years, we do a SDW-specific enrollment projection, and they factor in birth rates and all that math. But in 2023, they actually shared with all of their clients a statewide projection of enrollment. So again, as Jim mentioned, this isn't a SDW only issue. This is a Wisconsin issue. This is a national issue. So I just took the findings, a snapshot of their findings, and both of these studies are on our website. You can go out and read them. You can look at the methodologies they've used, along with the capacity study that Bray completed, and you can look at the numbers and the assumptions built into that as well. But for the state of Wisconsin, the orange area here is the key. City school districts like Waukesha, we're not rural, we're not suburban, we're a city district, are expected to decrease the most in comparison to those other types of school districts by 2.3% annually. I've budgeted a 2% drop in our enrollment every year for the last 10 years, so we're right on pace with the data they're showing as well. And their projections have been pretty accurate. For SDW specifically, again, this study was done in 24. They found that over the next 5 years, between kindergarten or pre-K through 12th grade, that SDW will likely lose between 1,000 and 1,500 students. And that trend is showing. And every third Friday in September, we count again, and you can just see that slow, steady drip. The other finding, or what we reference, is it's projected to decline through 2034. That doesn't mean that enrollment's going to come up in 2035. That's just the last year of the study. So we think, because birth rate's not going to be cured quickly, right? For those kids to make their way all the way through our high school level. We think that decline will probably continue for several years beyond that. So again, going back and kind of giving the data and the numbers that we'll be referencing as we continue to present, we have our total capacity of 14,232. We have two sites that we consider flex spaces, and I mentioned them both earlier. Blair and Pleasant Hill could both return to being schools, but for the purposes of this conversation, we consider them flex area. Administratively, we could go just about anywhere, right? We just need 4 walls, a roof, and internet connections to operate. So for the purpose of this, we take out this capacity for these two buildings. So really the number we're looking at is what we're running right now. The schools we operate right now are 13,526 seats. And then we came up with a range of the capacity that we are looking to reduce through this process between 10 and 15%. And in terms of seats, and not percentages, if we cut 10%, we'd be cutting just over 1,350 seats. And if we go up to 15%, it'd be just over 2,000 seats. And more than likely, it'll be some number in the middle of all that. But we still have sizable capacity. And again, for the purpose of this, I put this year's enrollment in, but keep in mind, our enrollment is going to continue to decline by 2%. So this number of 9,675 in a couple of years, just going off the top of my head, will be closer to 9,200. We'll have more capacity. But the available capacity, you can see, even if we reduce these to these thresholds, we still would have 2,498 seats available at the 10% level and over 1,500 seats available at the 15% level, not counting the 2 flex spaces. So there's a lot of room out there. And what has led us to the recommendation to the board, there's a cost of operating excess seats, running excess buildings. You have to maintain them, you have to mow the lawn, you have to pay utilities, you have to staff them. And the question we came to, and the one I think the board is ultimately going to answer, is do we continue to fund capital and seats, or do we shift those dollars to services to students, meaning fewer buildings but more services, more stable staffing, those types of things. So as you think through this and we go through this process that Jim will outline over the summer, have that question in the back of your mind, because that's really what we're all here to talk about and learn about, and ultimately have the board consider as they make their decisions. So that's the expense side of running that capital. But on the revenue side, as I mentioned earlier, our funding is based off of the third Friday of September is the most important fiscal day of the year. Every school counts the kids in their buildings. And we get 86% of our revenue off of the number of resident kids in our buildings. And you can see, this is a different count than our on-site, but the resident count has continued to drop at the same pace. So as we have the expenses of ongoing capital and excess seats, our revenue is being restrained because we have fewer and fewer kids in the school district at the same time. So we're getting hit on both sides of the ledger. So I won't bore you with any more school finance talk than that, but I think it's important just to understand how all of this comes back to the number of kids in our buildings.
Okay. Thanks, Darren. All right, so back to this overall process, and we'll outline it for you. So phase 1, there are 3 phases of the Optimizing the Future process. We are currently in phase 1, which are the information sharing meetings. We want to be able to express the challenges we have with enrollment due to the drop in the birth rate, and Darren just did that for you, and then our objectives for the entire calendar year of 2025. We have one more of the community information sharing meetings after tonight, and then we will begin the gathering input phase. So ultimately, what we will do administratively, and we've started to work on some ideas, is create sample plans, where our goal is 3, of ways that we could address reducing the facility footprint by 10 to 15%. And then we will go and have internal staff feedback sessions as well as parent and community sessions such as this that'll look a little different. They'll be more intimate. There'll be rotating tables. We'll be talking back and forth on the strengths of a plan, the questions or wonders you have about a plan, and ultimately taking feedback on the ideas and the plans that we put together throughout. That'll start like in June. We'll announce our entire plan for that at the May 12th and May 14th, F&F on May 12th, and then the full board meeting on May 14th. And then throughout that entire process, we will ultimately come to what we hope is a final recommendation that makes the most sense based on stakeholder feedback, and bring a recommendation forward to the Board of Education sometime between October and December for their considered approval. So we're trying to take a very transparent and long look at what should the future of the school district of Waukesha look like, and we're trying to engage both our internal staff as well as our parents and community in that process. We'll talk about this again at the end, but I'll say it twice so you make sure you hear it. Anything that would be board approved during phase 3 would not take effect until the beginning of the 26-27 school year. So very shortly we're going to be all home for the summer, right? The kids are going to be home, and it's going to be the end of the school year somehow. It's going very fast. But nobody has to worry about where they're coming back to school next year. The district footprint will look exactly the same as it does while we work through this process. So in the phase 1 information sharing meetings, the agenda is those 3 steps. Darren has just taken you through the enrollment trends and showed you what those look like over the past 20 years. I'll next take you into number 2, which is the actions that we've previously taken to address the enrollment trends, and there are several. As Darren said, we've been dealing with declining enrollment for a period of time, like most school districts. And then we'll high-level overview those steps in the process, the 3 again at the end. So in the white boxes, we did have 6 sessions for our staff a couple weeks ago. And as I said earlier, this is our second of the information sharing sessions for the parents and community. So we're going to walk through some actions that we've taken to address declines in enrollment due to the birth rate. And the first one is the right sizing of elementary sections. And so when I say elementary sections, what I mean is the number of elementary teachers that we had in the school district of Waukesha, or have, and the number of sections or classes of elementary school that we're offering. So you can see back in 2011-12, we had the equivalent of 242 full-time teachers, or 242 sections of elementary school. And when we look at today, we have 196 sections of elementary school and 196 elementary teachers. Next year, we envision being in the 180 range. So it's been a continual decline, again, tied to the decline in students. And the other thing we want to show you is, as we look at what our average class size has been throughout that time, taking some snapshots of different periods, it stays relatively the same. And that's, again, due to the fact that we've been able to manage and right-size the number of staff we need to match the number of students that we have in the district. And so now our next proposal in this process is to match the number of buildings to that same cadence. We've also done some right sizing of the footprint already in the school district, and that dates back to 2010 when Pleasant Hill Elementary was closed. As Darren mentioned, that's now leased to the Richardson School. In 2019, Blair Elementary was closed, and in 2022, we closed Whittier Elementary, merged it with Hadfield, and at that time, those buildings were using a combined 42.5% of their capacity. So it made sense to put them in one facility together, and it's working well at Hadfield. We also had the great fortune to work with Carroll University on a couple of real estate transactions, and we were able in 2023 to sell Randall to Carroll, and then also to sell the Lindholm building, which was our former administrative office, to Carroll. Carroll is a great partner, and they're relatively landlocked. They're looking for the ability to have more space for different programs they want to start. So it worked out really well for both of us. And then what we were able to do is move Randall to Whittier, that was vacant. We moved Lindholm to Blair, as we said earlier. And now we have no vacant buildings in the school district of Waukesha, which is a very positive thing. Every year, when we look at that structural deficit, a big part of it is right-sizing our expenditures. And so every year, Mrs. Thede, who's our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, looks at right-sizing all of our employee groups to match those trends. The bus routes are another example of the reductions we've seen. Back to 18-19, we had 101 routes. Today, we have 75. And we anticipate next year we'll have 75, and then beyond that, probably 75 or even a few less as our population continues to go down. And then lastly, we also wanted to talk about the fact that we're very proud of the way that we've used one-time funding to fund projects that aren't ongoing. And so the most recent example of that is the ESSER money, or the COVID relief money that school districts received. We received $19.2 million that we spent on HVAC projects in our buildings, as well as learning recovery and curricular resources. And so those are things that, while we have a plan for how we're going to replace the curricular resources over time, we certainly didn't want to go back to the community and ask you again for more resources, but rather use that money for one-time HVAC projects that we could be proud of and do without asking for more. So part of this process is continuing to have that mindset where we take matters into our own hands, and we create a future for us that we see as viable. So I also want to talk about the fact that we've done some strategic investing, and we're very proud of the student opportunities that we have. And I want to make it very clear that we're not in a crisis in the school district of Waukesha. We are simply trying to be proactive. We're getting out in front. It's an effort to get out in front of the trends that we have seen dating back to the data Darren showed you that have proven true, and that we see most likely occurring through 2034 and likely beyond. So back to the strategic investments. In the past 3+ years, we have standardized our curriculum across the school district of Waukesha with the support of our Teaching and Learning Committee and our Board of Education to make sure that teachers have resources in their hands, and we have the exact same resources across the elementary level, across the middle level, across the high school level, so that students have the same opportunities to learn at high levels. We've also standardized our district-wide building security system. It's a product called Verkada. Nothing is more important than making sure our students and our staff are as safe as possible. And so that system is not only our camera and security system, it's our background check-in system, it's our keypad door access. It serves multiple features, and it's a state-of-the-art system that we're very proud to implement. When I talk about our enrollment declining, what has not declined is our special ed population. And so we're currently at 18.5% of our students that have a special need. And so we have increased our special ed staffing year over year to address the needs of those special education students, and we're proud to do it. We also moved the high school to a block schedule. This is the first year of that. We've been very proud of the work that that's done for both kids and teachers to have fewer classes each day, to get deeper into their learning, and really it's been transformative for them. We're also working on a middle school schedule change that we hope to implement in 26-27 at the same time as any of this optimizing the future work would go into effect. And then lastly, we have done a number of building system upgrades. In addition to the things I've mentioned, each summer we try to take one elementary, if not two if we can, and really kind of give them a makeover, kind of like what you see when you walk into Butler. New flooring, new paint, new ceiling tiles, LED lighting, new technology, moving away from smart boards and putting the large flat panel TVs that we can AirPlay to with Apple products. So trying to make our learning environments as intuitive as possible for our students and our teachers to have success. So we're very proud of those strategic investments. We want to continue to strategically invest at that rate, if not even a greater rate. And that's all in part due to a great Board of Education and the reason that we are standing here tonight to talk about how many buildings do we truly need. We're also very proud of our student opportunities, and so you may or may not know that we have a tuition agreement with the Montessori School of Waukesha. That's a great partnership. Our kids can attend there. It's financially beneficial for both the Montessori School and the School District of Waukesha. Our EHU virtual school is outstanding, not only for our students in Waukesha, but for kids all across Wisconsin that take part in it. We want to continue to offer that at a high level. Our dual language program is arguably the best in the state of Wisconsin. We have that in 4 elementary sites, all 3 middle schools, and our 3 high schools. We want to continue to offer it. Our K-8 STEM program is solid. We have both our elementary STEM, that's now at the Whittier site, and our Saratoga site, which is our middle school STEM program. We want to continue to offer those. We also have our 2 academies at South High School, the Engineering Prep Academy as well as the Health Professions Academy. Those are great for kids and for families. We want to continue to offer those. And year over year, we continue to see an increase in our dual enrollment programming. That's students who are using district resources to get a head start on their college education, generally at WCTC, where they're getting involved in the trades, police work, nursing work, early education work, a number of different majors, and they're getting a head start that benefits them and benefits their families, since the district is taking on that payment, and we're very proud to do that. So this entire process is around, again, not being in a crisis, but being proactive, getting out front, and trying to think about how do we continue to do the things on this slide and even more, and we think the way to do that is by having fewer buildings within the district portfolio. So some final thoughts. What I said to kick us off is that we're looking to create this long-range budget planning process that will guide future decision-making. We've tried to show you in multiple ways that we're not alone in facing declining enrollment, fewer students due to the decline in birth rate. We're looking to reduce the building capacity by 10 to 15%. Darren talked to you about that, looking first at our K-8 schools. Somewhere between 1,350 and just a little over 2,000 seats. Just to give you some context, when we think about what is the capacity of a building, so at the elementary level, our lowest capacity elementary school is Meadowbrook. That holds 304 students. Our highest capacity elementary school is Summit View. That holds 608 students. And all of our other elementary schools are somewhere in between that 300 and 600 range, generally in the 300 to 400, and we have a few that tick up into the 500 range. At the middle school level, Les Paul has a population, or a capacity, I should say, of 825, and Horning and Butler have capacities of 925. So it's going to take a combination of buildings and a combination of ideas to reach those 10 and 15% targets. And then lastly, as I said earlier, we will use the calendar year of 2025 to take a very deep look with input from our staff and from our parents and community on how do we optimize the future of the School District of Waukesha and make a recommendation to the board sometime late in the calendar year 2025. So again, we don't have to review this in depth, but there are 3 phases to this program that take us through 2025. We're currently in phase 1. We appreciate you being here with us this evening. We'll next move into the gathering input, phase 2, where we will have some plans designed, where we will take feedback on those plans. And we will then, in phase 3, present a recommendation to the Board of Education for their consideration. And again, any board-approved recommendation would not be implemented any sooner than the fall of 2026. So there's the QR code again. You also have it in your hand. We'll have an opportunity. Ms. Gennerman has been looking at those questions that have been coming in. We'll have some time to answer some of those. And as I said, they're going to help us in our thinking, and they're also going to be part of our frequently asked question document that'll be posted on our website. Once we complete these sessions, then we'll compile all the questions. We've been compiling them already. We'll get the ones from next week when we're at Horning on Wednesday, and then that frequently asked question document will be uploaded shortly thereafter. So, Ms. Gennerman, what do we have?
So to start tonight, we have about 30 questions, and so what I've been doing is just trying to group them into like topics. So we'll try to get to the majority of topics, but we may not get to every question. So to start us off, we wanted to talk about, there's a cluster of questions around the buildings and financial pieces. So if a school building is no longer needed, will it be sold quickly for some redevelopment?
That's a good question. We talked about the real estate transactions that we've had with Carroll University. The goal is not to have vacant buildings sitting throughout the city of Waukesha. So the answer to that is yes. We would be engaging in, we have regular meetings with the city has regular meetings with developers. Waukesha is essentially getting very built out, and so people are looking for spaces to create different types of projects. And so our goal would be to work with the city, to work with developers, and work with our Board of Education to not have vacant buildings and see if they could be reused in some other fashion.
The $20 million that was recently moved to avoid going to referendum, will that money now be needed now that we're discussing this long-range plan, and are we still looking at a referendum?
20 million, what does that mean?
I'm not sure.
Oh. Okay, so let's see, the 20 million, what you may be talking about, whoever submitted that question, is every year, so we talked about the increasing amount of special education students in percentage that we have, and that is, special ed is in Fund 27 of the district budget. The general district budget is Fund 10. That funds almost everything else within the school district, and our budget is just a little over $200 million. Every year, that number that we have to transfer, we don't have enough money in 27, which is the special ed fund, to cover the expenses. So every year we transfer an increasing amount. This year it's $20 million that we're transferring from Fund 10, the general fund, to Fund 27 to cover the special education expenses, which we're happy to do. And that's why the conversation around the state budget, if you're watching that at all, there's a large push on increasing special ed funding in the state. So right now it's a 30% reimbursement rate. So for every dollar that we spend, we get reimbursed 30 cents. So if that went up, any time that would go up, we would transfer less money over, which would be beneficial not only to the school district of Waukesha, but all school districts. So that's maybe the 20 million that you're talking about. And in terms of would a referendum be part of this process, our recommendation is not to have a referendum be part of this process. We did just have one in 2018. We are actually paying it off in April of 2026, so we'll be a debt-free school district, which we're proud of. And we paid it off at a rapid pace, 8 years instead of the 10 that the board took out at the time, or 20 that most school districts take to pay it off. But we believe based on the numbers that we showed you, the enrollment that we showed you, and the capacity that we have, that we need to do some due diligence in order to make ourselves a little bit more lean and make ourselves a little bit more efficient before we would think about coming back and asking the community for additional resources.
Is the school district having conversations with state representatives and the Joint Finance Committee about student reimbursement rates for public schools versus charter schools?
Yes, we are doing that. So as part of our Policy and Government Relations Committee, we have regular ongoing meetings with our legislators, and actually Senator Julian Bradley is on the Joint Finance Committee, which is a great benefit for his constituents, including all of us. So yes, I did have comments to the Joint Finance Committee on some major topics, one being the special education reimbursement and seeing some increase in that, and then also the low revenue ceiling, which is very important for us. We have been and continue to be a low spending school district, and that dates back to 1993 when revenue caps came into play and every district was capped at what they were spending. So if you were a high spending school district back then, you've continued to be high spending. If you were low, which we were, and that's that fiscal stewardship again, we have been capped low. So going into the last state budget, the 23-25, we were spending $10,200 $800 per student. And the low revenue ceiling, which we advocated for in that budget, went up to $11,000. And so our board was able to tax up to $11,000, so it was an $800 increase per student. And then you may be aware of the $325 that goes on every year now for the next 400 years. That was in court, and now it's been stayed or been allowed to stand. So we were able to add another $325 in 24-25. So we now spend at $11,325 per student, which is much better than where we were. Still not to where some of our surrounding districts are able to spend, but we have maximized the resources available to us. We continue to advocate for that. Every other summer, we meet with all of our legislators, and we have ongoing dialogue with all of our legislators on a regular basis. They call us to ask for feedback on particular bills, and so we have a great relationship with all of our legislators, and we do advocate for public schools and for public education on those fronts.
What are we doing to focus our efforts on making Waukesha a desirable place for families who currently are here and may want to stay, or those who are new to our Waukesha area and want to join us?
I think I would take us back to some of the strategic investment slides and some of the student opportunities. We're very proud of those pieces, and the things that we've done in the past few years to invest in high quality, guaranteed and viable curriculum, tremendous. Those are great selling points. The security system, making sure that our kids and staff are as safe as possible, and all of those student opportunities that we talked about, including moving to a block schedule, thinking about something similar at the middle school and a different type of schedule that gives kids more in-depth learning opportunities. We just think we have an incredible array of offerings, and we want to be able to stay the course, at least offer all the things we're offering, and we think if we can work through this process, we provide ourselves the opportunity to offer even more, because we will free up resources that aren't going into vacant seats, but rather can go into, Mr. Clark's point earlier, services for students.
After thinking about the student and family retention piece, what are actions that are being taken to retain our high-quality teachers?
So actually, I talked about that early on. We're very proud of our teachers. We're very proud of our district support staff. And we have a 93% teacher retention rate, which we're proud of. There's always going to be some level of turnover in any organization. And that's just going to happen based on people moving, spouse getting a new job, whatever it might be. Maybe leaving the profession. That happens more so now than it used to. People having different opportunities and not having to travel, being closer to home. Those are all realistic things. And then you throw on top of that retirements, and those are well deserved. So when we're retaining 93% of our staff, we feel really good about that. And we have opportunities I have a superintendent's advisory committee. It's a teacher rep from every school where we meet and talk about issues. We have a good partnership with our Education Association of Waukesha, where we have meet and confer sessions and we talk through challenges and issues. And I also have a parent group called the Superintendent's Advisory Council that we meet and we talk about ways that we can make the district better. So we are proud of our staff, and we're retaining our staff at a high rate.
There's several questions that focus on charter schools and the impact of those other schools. How does that impact our student enrollment, but also asking about our student open enrollment out and in. So if you can just speak in general to those.
Yeah, so those are good questions. So let's start with open enrollment. So this year, for open enrollment in brick and mortar schools, we had 795 students open enroll out of the school district of Waukesha, and we had close to 300, it was almost 300 on the dot, that open enrolled in. So there's a discrepancy there, but every year we're positive in open enrollment because of the influx we get throughout the state of Wisconsin from eAchieve. So those students aren't counted in this particular process because we're talking about building capacity and in brick and mortar buildings, but overall we're positive, and that's a good thing. The charter schools and like La Casa, for example, we have roughly 20 students at La Casa from the school district of Waukesha. Mill Creek is a new private charter school. We have around 80 students that go to Mill Creek. And then we have roughly a little between 1,400 and 1,500 students that attend the parochial system in Waukesha. Those numbers are relatively similar and have been consistent, particularly the parochial enrollment, for years. So sometimes people have been wondering, like, if we had an open enrollment that was, the open enrollment gap is just shy of 500 students. If you brought 500 students back in open enrollment that didn't leave, we still have a capacity problem, right? So there's the challenge is just fewer students, period. But there are, to the question, there are more educational opportunities in the marketplace now than there used to be. But we do hold our own for the most part, and you're going to have some open enrollment, certainly challenges when you are the largest district in an area surrounded by a number of small districts. That's not uncommon.
There's a few questions that really are asking about how the decision will be made around the schools. So is student achievement factored? What parts of the building are factored? And overall, would there be a consideration to moving 6th grade back to elementary?
I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, we've developed a list of criteria, and it's not just going to be based on the smallest school will be closed. It's really us taking, this is why we're taking this in complete year to go through this, is to identify what's the most flexible space for us in the long term, meaning is there green space for an addition? What's the pickup drop off for, like, what money have we invested in? Which ones can, be used for different purposes? But we were also looking at buildings, and just because it was built to be a elementary school doesn't mean it has to be an elementary school. So we're taking a really broad approach to this. So it's not going to be as simple as the oldest building is going to be closed, or, like I said, the smallest. It's a much more in-depth analysis of all of our facilities.
And the second part of that was around grade configuration. Grade configuration is possible within our thinking, right? Like, we can look at how do we use the buildings differently, what are the best buildings to keep in the portfolio, and then how do we best utilize those. So that's why questions like those are helpful, because we have already started thinking about is a different grade configuration part of a potential option that we put together to get community and staff feedback on.
All right, for our last question of tonight, I know I didn't get to every question, but we tried to get it to as many as possible. Can you speak to any vacant land that we own? And I think at one point it was considered for an additional middle school. So is that on the table for possibly being sold if we still do have the vacant land?
Yeah, we own one small parcel, but the two larger parcels that we own, they're both on the bypass. One's on Oakdale on the south side. If you know where that Victorian is, that has kind of the teal color and the pink. The other side of the street, when you look up that hill, we own it's about 35 acres there. That was bought back in the 90s as a potential school site as well. We don't foresee that being a school site in the future, and we have had conversations and offers to buy that land. We just haven't been able to come to an agreement. But then actually those offers and those types of conversations led us to this recommendation also, because we didn't have a long-term plan. So if we were to sell that property, in what context would that be, and what other decisions might that impact down the road? And then on the west side, at the end of MacArthur Road, there's a field there. If you look straight out over the cornfield, we don't own that entire space, but we own that large parcel as well, and we own a little bit on the east side. The bypass kind of cut through our property. But we're rolling that into this overall planning because we want to leave flexibility, because you don't know what the futures are going to be. So we're kind of rolling, like, again, this is why this is a year-long process, because for a big district, we have lots of options, which is good, but it also makes the process a lot longer because you have to study each one of those options.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you taking some time out of your evening to join us. Our Optimizing the Future website, on our district website, it's very prominent, pops up, looks just like this. That's where you can find ongoing information and updates. You can find these presentations. You can find a voiceover of this presentation if you wanted to listen to it again. It's very similar to what we talked about this evening. And We hope that as you listened today and looked at the slides, that you see that there is a reality that we're facing. There's a reality of fewer students, not only in Waukesha, but across Wisconsin and across the United States. What we're trying to do is be proactive in addressing that. We also realize as we get into bringing out options and talking about different ways that we can hit those capacity targets, that we are going to stir some emotions, right? And there's going to be some challenges associated with this. It will not be easy work. But we do believe if we can balance the reality with the emotions, we can come together a viable solution that leads to a much more viable, I guess is the greatest word I can use, future for the School District of Waukesha, where we're controlling our own destiny. We're not reliant on referendums, we're not reliant on state budgets, but we're ultimately trying to say we can do these things ourselves, and then whatever comes into us beyond that is beneficial to us as well. But thank you again for joining us. Like I said, May 12th at our Finance Facilities meeting, May 14th at our full board meeting, we'll describe what the Phase 2 process looks like, and we hope we'll see some of you again this summer when we have an opportunity to gather input on some of the plans that we're designing. So thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We appreciate it.